I had this laptop that she had never seen before. And I said, Steph, I need to tell you something. I know you probably know that I watch porn. I think it's a pretty normal thing for guys to do, but pretty sure I've had a deep addiction to it for the last 15, 20 years. But I want you to know all that stuff is behind me. I'm committed to doing whatever I can to honor you and to respect you. And to prove that to you, this is the laptop that I've watched porn on every day for the last 5 years. And I took it, Jeremy, and I literally ripped it apart. I had never looked back. Yeah, I struggled, but I was walking in absolute freedom, guilt and shame free, literally felt like a new man. And it's like, for me, all this success that I had, like, didn't mean anything in the past because now there was like this new level unlocked because I wasn't wearing a mask anymore. And, you know, anybody that has lived with a mask on, when you fully remove that and walk in truth and integrity, it's almost as if you're a newborn human being.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Lipkowitz, and with over 12 years of meditation experience as a mindfulness trainer and coach for high performers, I've become obsessed with helping people break free from compulsive, unhealthy behaviors and addictions and step into a life of true freedom so that they can finally become their best selves and cultivate deeper and lasting fulfillment. I've created Unhooked, the Breaking Porn Addiction podcast, to give you simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to master your mind and optimize your life. This is Unhooked. Hey friends, welcome back to Unhooked. I'm your host, Jeremy Lipkowitz, and I'm really excited to share today's conversation with you. My guest today is Coach Frank Rich. Frank is a former bodybuilder, successful entrepreneur, and men's health coach who now helps men overcome addiction and rebuild their lives through discipline, fitness, and mindset. In this episode, Frank shares his story of battling porn addiction for nearly 20 years and the moment that everything shifted. He talks about the day he came clean to his partner, smashed his old laptop, and made a decision to live with radical honesty and integrity. It's a raw and emotional story that a lot of you will resonate with. We also get into the role of identity change, daily routines, physical training, and how building a new life often starts with just telling the truth. Frank keeps it real, doesn't sugarcoat things, and brings a ton of practical wisdom to the table. I really think you're going to get a lot out of this one. If you enjoy this podcast, please do us a huge favor and like, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you're listening. It really would mean a lot. So thanks in advance for supporting the show. And now, without further ado, here's my conversation with Coach Frank Rich. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Unhooked Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Lipkowitz, today with my new friend, Coach Frank Rich. Frank, welcome to the show.
Jeremy, honored to be here, brother.
Yeah, so we just wrapped up doing a podcast interview on your podcast. So for anyone out there listening, definitely go check out Coach Frank Rich's podcast. I will link that because it was a fun episode that we just did, episode 1 in the Coach's Corner. We got into some great stuff. So check that out on his podcast. But now we're going to be diving into your story. And I want to dive in with your kind of personal history because like myself, you have a history with porn addiction and kind of breaking free from it yourself. So if you can, take me back to that turning point in your life. Like, what was it that made you say enough is enough?
Yeah, Jeremy, I appreciate that, man. And, you know, I think much like you, identified as a high performer, a guy that was out there and was chasing growth and success and coming up an athlete and always being competitive and had some early success in the corporate world, and bodybuilding kind of caught me and around 25 years old. This was the early 2000s. So I always, I identified myself as somebody who was winning and deep into personal development and reading the books and the Tony Robbins and the seminars and all that stuff. And despite multiple six-figure businesses and bodybuilding trophies and what many would say a successful social circle, is like there was always something missing in me. And I was very clear about that. Like, why is there this hole inside of me? Why was there constant darkness. And I think for a long time, the answer I gave myself is it was just who I was. I saw addiction and mental health and suicide pretty rampant in my family's lineage. I remember 13 years old having a cousin that was just a couple years older than me take his life. And then I saw an uncle a few years later take his life. I saw my dad struggle and fight his own demons. So I think for me, the identity of you're going to struggle was deeply ingrained. And I think that's what triggered me into this growth and development journey. And then it was around 2017, probably. So this is my mid 30s, 33, 34 years old. I stumbled across Gary Wilson's TED Talk. For those that know, Gary is the author of Your Brain on Porn. And everything he said hit me. And it began me down this journey. Because reality, Jeremy, like I grew up in a culture, I think I'm maybe a little bit younger than you, where porn was just normalized. It was Playboy magazines and stuff like that. And I saw my dad had it. So I was like, oh, this is just, normal sexual behavior, right? It's kind of almost a rite of passage for boys back then to look at porn. And I never saw it really impact social relationships. I never really saw it have a negative impact on my ability to even date women. So I didn't connect dots at like, oh, there's actually like a deeper addiction that's rooted in something here until I saw Gary's YouTube video. And that set me down a deep hole, just uncovering all of this, right? I think I'm a guy like you. It's like once you kind of latch onto something, like you want all the answers. So I started to read the books, read all the information, like really begin to unpack this. And it's like, okay, neural programming, like neuroplasticity, how this, brings you deeper into identity crisis and shame issues. And then I saw some of the other things in my own life, like shine through some of these books. And I think what's maybe different with me than you is my journey into faith was a real turning point for me. So in August of 2018, after about an 18-month kind of struggle and wrestle with God, I did surrender my life to Christ, and it began to waken me up that I was walking out of alignment with any deep moral code. Like it was for 35 years, it was all about Frank. Like, what do I want? How do I get access to it? Who do I need to step on to get there? What corners do I need to cut in order to fulfill my desires? Now, I'm sure you and I would say that I was obviously deeply rooted in some of the issues that I had with porn, but it was all about me. So beginning to live my life through, somewhat of a massively different lens, it was like, hey, you got to start to kind of unpack and remove some of these things. So that was October of 2018. Once again, unpacking all these things, reading all the books. And then about 4 months later, I remember it very vividly, just like you had that hotel awakening moment. I was sitting in the car on a Thursday afternoon after a workout with a very close friend of mine, somebody I respected pretty deeply. His name was Zach, former Marine. We had a weekly men's group that we worked out with. And for whatever reason, Zach and I, at the end of this workout that day, decided to stay back and not attend the post-workout lunch and just had a conversation in our car. And I will tell you that was a divine appointment, because it was in that car that Zach started to open up to me about his struggles and how he was using meditation, and more specifically box breathing practices through Wim Hof to control his sexual urges. Now, Zach and I had never talked about porn. We never talked about struggles. I knew he was deep in the world of yoga and meditation, but when he said, Frank, this breathing work that I'm doing is helping me with my porn addiction, it shook me. It was like, wait a minute, what did you just say? Because prior to then, like, I knew I had a problem. I thought I was strange, and I knew there was this guy that wrote a book on it, but I didn't know anybody else personally that had struggled with it. And when Zach said that, it's almost like I felt a call, or like a tap on the shoulder, like, here's the opportunity that you've been looking for. Thursday afternoon, February 14th, Valentine's Day. Like I literally can feel that moment. Like it just happened yesterday. And I looked at Zach and I said, brother, I don't know why you felt compelled to share that, because we've never talked about any of these things, but I want to share something with you. I've been wrestling with trying to understand the impact this had on my life for the last 6 months. And I want to thank you for what you just did, because I think it gave me the courage that I needed. You and I will both talk about the need for community and vulnerable conversations. And that started for me right there in that car. And I remember looking him in the eyes and said, dude, I feel different. Like just talking about it, like there was this 10,000-pound weight lifted off of my chest and shoulders. And I said, I don't know what the hell is going to happen from this point on, but I'm so sick and tired of this shit that I'm giving it up forever. And I might need your help. I don't know what that looks like, but will you lock arms with me in this journey? And like, there was this embracing moment between two grown men that I think only people that go through these type of experiences can truly understand. But it changed my life, man. And at the time I was in a long-term committed relationship. And I remember telling Zach, I need to go home and tell Stephanie. He's like, you really sure about that? He's like, I don't know if she's ready for all this. And I said, I'm changing. And if she needs to know, that there's going to be a different man, she's going to have to jump on board. And I thought, honestly, at the time, man, I thought that it was going to be over for us because, all the things that I was hiding. And I say I was deeply hiding things. Like I had a secret laptop, like that stayed in the closet. Like that's how deep this addiction was ingrained into me, that I was doing everything I can to make sure that I never got caught looking. So when I went home the next day, because I wrestled with that internal dialogue, it was like two voices on the side of my shoulders, like, yeah, you don't need to tell her. She's never going to know. No, you're committed to this. You need to do it as this back and forth, 40-minute drive home. It wasn't until the next morning, actually getting ready for the day, I walked into the room where she was getting dressed, and I had this laptop that she had never seen before, like underneath my arms. And I said, Steph, I need to tell you something. I know you probably know that I watch porn. I think it's a pretty normal thing for guys to do, but pretty sure I've had a deep addiction to it for the last 15, 20 years. But I want you to know, all that stuff is behind me. I'm committed to doing whatever I can to honor you and to respect you. And to prove that to you, this is the laptop that I've watched porn on every day for the last 5 years. And I took it, Jeremy, and I literally ripped it apart. It's like the two flaps in the laptop. I ripped it. We got super emotional. But once again, man, I didn't really know what this journey was going to lead me to. I knew that there was obviously going to be some difficult struggles ahead. And there definitely was in the coming weeks, the temptations, the urges, the triggers, going deep into, some of the meditation and mindfulness practices that probably you teach, really getting deep into the word. But the key for me, man, is like, I felt so free in sharing it, and the acceptance that I got from Zach. I was like, I'm just going to tell everybody. Like, and that was like me for the next 3 months. Like I'm calling my buddy. I'm like, dude, let's have lunch. Like, and then I show up to lunch and like I dropped this massive bomb on them, and they're like, well, that's not what I was going to get into, but it's going to be okay. And I would meet my mom, for coffee. I'm getting emotional, and she's like, wow. She's like, I have a lot of respect to you. It's going to be okay. I talking to my buddies that were CEOs and entrepreneurs, and I thought that they were going to judge me, and they're like, dude, that's it? Like, you struggle with a little bit of porn? Everybody has. And it was like, for me, the freedom and acceptance that came with sharing it, I think is what led me to starting the podcast, because 6 months later, man, I had never looked back. Yeah, I struggled, but I was walking in absolute freedom, guilt and shame free, literally felt like a new man. And it's like, for me, all this success that I had, like, didn't mean anything in the past, because now there was like this new level unlocked because I wasn't wearing a mask anymore. And, anybody that has lived with a mask on, when you fully remove that and walk in truth and integrity, it's almost as if you're a newborn human being. So, that was the genesis, the story for me of struggling for 20 plus years, fighting freedom through guilt-free and shameless conversations and just acceptance. And then starting to share it, through the podcast and, some of the other media platforms that we had built. Cause I ran a coaching business. So I kind of already had a somewhat of a following. And that was another cool thing too, is like, I was the muscle guy. Like I had muscle building programs and ran a muscle coaching organization. When I started talking about these in those circles, like, dude, it changed everything. Like guys like just felt this new layer of like connection to me.
Wow, man. There's so many powerful moments in that story. I loved hearing about the story of you and your friend Zach, and just that moment of sharing, having that connection where all it takes is one person to be brave enough to open up and say, this is what I'm struggling with. And that can be an example. It can give permission to so many other people to do the same, to have that courage and to be vulnerable and open up. I resonate with that as well. Like just hearing guys talk about it in a more confident way, in a way that was shame free, and just saying, yeah, this is something I struggle with. Um, one thing I'd really love to dive into, because there are a lot of guys listening to this right now who the idea of telling everybody, the idea of telling a single person terrifies them to death. And they feel like I can't tell anyone because
Yeah.
what will they think of me? They'll think I'm so broken or perverted. Or so what was it that allowed you to just kind of tell everyone? What do you think it was that unlocked that for you?
Yeah. And it's interesting because I don't think everybody needs to go out there and tell everybody.
Mm.
I'm not sure if that's healthy for a lot of people, especially probably guys that you and I work with. I've had some pro athletes. I've had some pretty high profile figures come into the organization, and for those guys, there could be things that are at risk with sharing it with the wrong person.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I see the work that I do as a calling on my life. Not accepting that calling, I think, is a disservice. So that's the position that I'm in here today. But I don't think what you and I do is on the menu and agenda for every guy that's out there. I think you need to find one, though.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's got to start with one. And what does that person look like? Who is he? You got to do an audit, man. Like, you got to do an audit in your own life. And I know a lot of guys struggle with loneliness, and isolation. I think 30% of men under the ages of 30 report to having 0 close friends. And that's where organizations and guys like you and I can come in. So, if you don't have a father type figure, if you don't have a Zach in your life, if you don't have a bigger brother, if you're not a man of faith and you don't have a pastor or somebody that you can go to, there's plenty of guys like Coach Frank and Jeremy and other people out there that will create that space for you. But just because you hear me say that, yeah, my freedom was found in sharing it with everybody, that may not be your journey. But you got to find the one, and maybe start with yourself. Maybe grab a piece of paper and a journal and just be honest with yourself. Spend an hour in a quiet place, go outside, go into nature, go on a walk, leave the phone, leave the distraction, and speak truth to yourself. Because I think that can change your life as well. But yeah, your journey is not going to be mine. Your journey is not going to be Jeremy's. But start with truth with yourself. And then, yeah, you got to find somebody.
Yeah.
And if it's not in your life currently, there's a lot of great people out there that can help.
Yeah. Especially today with the internet and groups and all kinds of resources out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned, so that was the start of your journey, where you had this moment of insight of really realizing how this was messing with your life. You had this strong commitment, took this leap of faith of saying, I'm done with this. I don't know what's involved, but I'm committed to this process of healing. What helped you most in your actual recovery? In terms of actually breaking free from the addiction, what was most helpful for you?
Yeah. In addition to the community that I had built around me, because that was obviously very, very crucial. Guys like Zach, many guys that I've, talked about on my podcast. I was very fortunate starting in 2016 to really get myself into the right type of circles. And, the original genesis was like business masterminding. Like I was growing businesses and companies. So I got involved with some very high level men. So the men were a big part of it, but really it was my history. I came from a lower middle class upbringing, and by 22 years old, I had, broken any financial barriers or any financial ceilings that I'd seen anybody in my life get through. So I understood the power of identity transformation, even if I couldn't tell you what it was back then. So getting in entrepreneurship space, I was the blue collar family. Like I was told, you're going to work hard. You're probably not going to be the college doctor. Like you're just going to get a hard job, work hard, retire when you're 65 and kind of live, a mediocre life. So there's an element of identity transformation financially in entrepreneurship for me, but then also in bodybuilding, right? Anybody that decides to put themselves through months of willingness suffering, maybe has something a little bit wrong with them. But if you use that through the right perspective, it can change who you are. So I think I understood, even if I couldn't articulate it, what identity transformation was. And I also knew the power of honoring my commitments. Something I stood on pretty proud about, right? Like I said, my journey wasn't the one that I tried to quit multiple times. Like, I was ashamed of it, but I just accepted it for who I was. But when I said I was going to compete in bodybuilding, like, I meant it, and I did everything I could, and I climbed up a ladder. So I think it was a collective community, but also having decades of transformational work done and understanding the importance of real identity transformation, seeing yourself through the lens as a different person.
What's involved in that? Like, how do you help men shift their identity? Are there different practices or habits and routines that can help people do that?
Yeah, I think it starts with a vision. I think, you have to have a clear vision of this man that you're trying to become. Using the bodybuilding example, I love the documentary Pumping Iron. It's kind of the first thing that kind of brought some light to Arnold Schwarzenegger. And here was a guy that in the 70s, when he was living in Austria, talked about coming to the US, being a world champion bodybuilder, breaking into Hollywood, getting into politics, doing everything that he went on to accomplish. I had a lot of friends that were successful in bodybuilding, and I remember them saying, like, when I won the trophy, like, it didn't really feel special because I had envisioned that moment thousands of times leading up to it. So vision isn't just something you write on a piece of paper as a goal sheet. Like, you have to be able to close your eyes and see yourself living in that moment and experience and bring emotion to it. So for me, like, there was an emotion that I was looking to feel and experience by walking in freedom. And I used to spend a lot of time thinking about that.
Yeah. It's so funny that you mentioned kind of having a vision, and that's the first module in my Unhooked course is all about envisioning. And it's just the power. Like, for me, that was my first step of recovery as well, was seeing a vision of what I truly wanted and the life that I really deeply desired and the type of person I wanted to be. And it's interesting because that vision, part of it is the good vision, but also having, that vision of the future if you don't make a change. Like, what road am I headed down? For me, that was probably the biggest source of fuel for my recovery, was realizing that if I didn't make a change, I was going to be this creepy old 70-year-old dude hitting on girls at college bars. And it's like that vision of my future, of the vision, the future I didn't want, was really motivating for me too.
Yeah, no, we have exactly the same protocol, right? And it's understanding that humans are driven or motivated by two different distinct forces. There's the pursuit of pleasure, right, or reward based motivation, right? That's the vision of what I can accomplish. But then there's that fear, right? I'm running from something, and everybody's a little bit different. Some people will be highly driven by the pursuit and the winning. Very few, though. More are going to be massively pushed by the fear. So the more clear I think you can get on that side of things and really paint a picture of hell like you did, the more inspiration that's going to come out of that.
Yeah, and it's a balance. Like, obviously, you don't want to go too far into one. Like, if you're all fear all the time, I mean, that's going to burn you out. But it can be a healthy spark in the ignition. I'm curious to know, what is your take on, like, physical training as being an important component of recovery? Is it just kind of something that helped you, or is it something that you recommend for the guys in your program?
Yeah, I believe the fastest way to change your life is through a physical transformation, and everything we teach and do is rooted in identity change and identity transformation. And it's really hard to see yourself as the same person if you're walking around in a new body. I also believe it's probably the easiest in terms of, like, real biofeedback, right? There's a physical representation of the change that is taking place every time you look yourself in the mirror, especially after like week 2 or 3, like depending on where you are in the journey. But if you stick to a nutrition and fitness plan, and follow it to a T, by the end of week 2 or 3, like daily, you're going to see some progress in who you are. Sometimes the mental stuff can take months. Sometimes the emotional transformation can take months to really feel and experience. But if you go to put a pair of pants on that 3 weeks ago you couldn't button, and this week they're fitting nice and tight there, like that's it's like a check in the box, right? Like that's biofeedback. Like, okay, you're changing, right? And if you talk about how I believe confidence is built by honoring and keeping the promise that you make to yourself, like there's no greater tool that a man has to his exposure. Now, also, I mean, just, neurochemically and kind of brain chemistry and even gut health perspective, we know now based upon, a lot of the more recent science that your brain's ability to process and produce healthy neurotransmitters all starts within the gut. Now, this may not mean that your body's going to physically change, but if your diet is not in check and, it's filled with cookies and cupcakes and candy, you're going to produce unhealthy thoughts. Like there's just no way around it. So we actually take guys through fasting protocols and, real detailed specific nutritional cleanup to reset that gut microbiome. But yeah, I am a massive proponent in utilizing physical transformation as a tool for growth, identity transformation, and ultimately creating a new rebuilt man.
Yeah. I mean, and also just that mind-body connection, like exercise just makes you feel so damn good. It's one of the best things you can do for your life in general, let alone your recovery. But just getting all those, those feel good chemicals and neurotransmitters that come when you are exercising.
Yeah. And why do guys act out, right? Stress, anxious, carrying a lot of weight, feel the need for release. Like, okay, well, if you're not physically putting yourself in elements of energetic release every single day. So sometimes it's like just getting in the gym or going for a hard run or doing a hard physical workout, like will release the energy that is bottling up inside of you. And then, yeah, all the healthy neurochemicals that are produced through training and exercise and all that great stuff.
Aside from exercise and nutrition, are there any non-negotiable habits or routines that you teach your clients?
Yeah, we have a daily 5 protocol, and it starts with winning the first minute of the day. So no snooze. And some guys, because we work with a lot of high performers, like don't really struggle, but we try to explain the power of starting the day with a win, honoring your commitments, right? When you hit that snooze button, it's breaking a promise that you made to yourself. Like you set that alarm clock. You said, this is the time I'm going to wake up and I'm going to start my day. And every time you reach over and say extra 5 minutes, you're breaking that promise. Well, that develops a reputation and a habit within yourself that there's negotiation in the things that you say. So the first one is not hitting snooze. We have an outdoor walk, phone free or device free. I was doing this for about 5 years, and then I read the book Comfort Crisis in December by Michael Easter, and they share the study that they did with 2 groups, and one went for a walk with their phone, and the other went out in nature without their phone. And the people that spent minimum 15 minutes outside at least 3 to 5 times a week without their phone showed lower levels of depression, lower levels of anxiety. So we encourage our guys to get outside for a 30-minute walk and just some awareness and reflection. We have a daily reading habit of 10 pages in any type of personal development book, morning gratitude practice where we want you to write out the things, but then once again, bring the emotion of gratitude into that experience with you. And then an end of the day, evening mindfulness practice, where you spend some time in kind of journaling, reflection, highlighting the wins for the days and kind of unpacking, maybe where things needed to go a little bit better.
That's a powerful list. You call it the Daily 5?
The Daily 5, yeah.
Yeah, I love that, the walking in nature, especially. I think the Japanese have some languages have like words that you just can't really translate, but I think the Japanese have like an actual word for the therapeutic effect of like walking out in a forest. And it's so true. It's like just getting out in nature, it calms the nervous system, reminds you of your connection to the universe. And we're so addicted to our phones these days. I mean, it's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll have, case specific, like that's for everybody, but there's other guys, we'll put rules and boundaries. These wouldn't be so much more as like daily habits and practices, but keeping your phone out of the bedroom,
Yeah.
stop taking your
Huge.
phone to, the bathroom with you. It's like you're in there to do the thing and then finish. You don't need to be scrolling TikTok and Instagram for
Yeah.
17 minutes while you're sitting on the toilet so your legs get numb.
I know. I miss the days when we were younger when like you just went and took a shit and
Yeah.
that was all you did.
Yeah.
And you were there with your thoughts and you had time to process. In some way, it was such a better life.
My girlfriend now, she's like, you don't take your phone to the bathroom? I was like, no. She's like, oh my God, I love that. I was like, really? She's like, yeah, everybody else, like, she had, like, she was previously married, so he had an ex-husband. He's like, he spent 35 minutes in the bathroom. I was like, oh, he's probably watching porn.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, man. Sometimes we just got to get back to basics, like just be a human,
Yeah. I heard an interesting one with the bedroom, man. I don't know, what your thoughts are on this, but, it's been like 6+ years since I've taken my phone into the bedroom. And it was obviously due to boundaries and, not putting yourself in vulnerable environments. But then I remember I saw a YouTube clip where a guy was talking about the nervous system. So our phone is associated with work, calendars, reminders, stress-inducing triggers, right? The bed is meant to be the opposite. The bed is meant to be a place of rest, relaxation. Well, when you take the stressful thing and put it into the place of rest, you're now associating that place where you're supposed to be calm and relaxed with an environment of stress. And I'm like, dude, that makes so much sense. Like, if you're just sitting there scrolling and you're getting reminders and TikToks and this and that, it's like you now created your bed as an environment of stress-inducing activities when it's meant to be the exact opposite.
Yeah, and it ruins both sides of the day. Like as you're going to sleep and you're kind of ingesting all of that and, raising your cortisol and everything as you're trying to wind down and go to sleep. But also the other side of it is a lot of guys who leave their phone right next to their bed, the first thing that they do when they wake up is they roll over and check their phone. And it's this immediate spike in cortisol and stress and anxiety, and you're already on other people's agendas. So yeah, I'm totally in line with you. One of the first things I recommend to all the guys in my community is get your phone outside of the bedroom, get an old school alarm clock, spend some time at the start of the day where you're not connected with your phone. For me, it's also one of my fundamental kind of routines is to not have my phone in the bedroom. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you approach the topic of relapse prevention? Like, let's say, if there's a guy in your community who is relapsing, how do you help support him in that process?
Yeah. And it starts with knowing like we can only help where we know help needs to be. So it's creating a space and environment where those things are accepted, not judged, and not shamed upon. We're going to do a lot of front end work to the best of our ability to try to prevent, whether you want to call it a slip, relapse, whatever. I call it a poor decision. Like you made an improper decision that's aligned with the person that you're trying to become. So trying to reframe it, right? I always use this analogy that if we were trying to build a canoe from scratch, right? We're going to grab a bunch of wood. We're going to start to kind of build this thing. And, the first time we throw it out into the river, like there's probably going to be some leakage. There's going to be some holes in it. Unless you're an expert canoe builder, like your first attempt is probably going to have some holes in it. So those relapses, in my opinion, aren't failures. They've exposed areas of inadequacy, or they exposed areas that we need to take a deeper look on and begin to patch things up. So I think a big piece for me, because I've seen so much guilt and shame and how these things can really deteriorate a guy's success, is just trying to reframe it as like, hey, I'm going to expect some of these things to happen. If you're coming into the program, whether it's for 3 months or 6 months, however long you're going to be here, my goal is not to simply have you go that length of time without looking at porn, because that's easy. You can white knuckle your way through anything. Like we're on a journey of growth, discovery, evolution, and identity transformation. And if there's a slip, or in my case, an error in decision making, that's an area that we need to zoom in on and say, okay, let's unpack this, figure out and then make a game plan kind of moving forward. So it's the reframing of it. It's just saying, hey, this is actually a great thing, right? Because now we're learning through this process here collectively together, and then creating the supportive, encouraging environment. And I think that's a lot of times where the power of community and having guys openly share their journeys, because Tom out there in Idaho could be going through something and he shares, in week 4 what happened, but Bob is in week 1 and he gets to hear from Tom. So now he's got some knowledge of like, okay, like I never really thought that would happen to me, but now when my life takes me down a path where that could potentially happen, I have a background and kind of an understanding of what I could do to kind of navigate it. So it's an offensive, defensive kind of approach that we take.
Yeah, I really like that reframing. I'd never heard of this reframe, but calling it a poor decision instead of a relapse.
Yeah.
Like instead of saying, "Oh, I relapsed," just say, "Oh, I made a poor decision last night."
Yeah. And why did you do it? Like
yeah.
what was, what were the series of decisions, right? Because no decision stands outside of a handful of other decisions. So if you frame it in that lens, you can say, okay, well, for the last 3 days, I wasn't journaling. I slipped, on my nutrition here. I negotiated here. I haven't really connected with my wife. Like there's going to be series of decisions that oftentimes lead up to that one big poor one.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like also that kind of the analogy you gave of like, it's a good thing. It's there to shine a light on something that needs addressing. It's there to help you identify what needs to be patched up. And for some reason, I have this image in my head. I remember seeing something about like truckers when they need to find like a hole in the tire. They pour like Coca-Cola over the tire and it kind of bubbles up wherever there's a hole. And it's this way of identifying, where are the holes in the tire so that you can patch it up. And for me, it's the same thing. It's like, oh yeah, relapse is a chance to explore where you're still getting stuck, where you're still hooked by the addiction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we'll have some things early on in the curriculum and in assignments that kind of the guys will go through that will help even in maybe getting those answers before they need to happen. Because if a guy's out there listening to this, like your porn use is pretty consistent. Like if you sat for the next 30 minutes and kind of audited and journaled like the last handful of times where you acted out, like there's going to be a lot of commonalities and similarities into your mental emotional state, into your environments, into perhaps the time of the day. So understanding all these things prior to them happening again, once again raises the awareness, because sometimes some of the things that guys are struggling with are acting out unconsciously because they just haven't really put in the initial work to bring the thing to the surface. But if we can do some of that early work on and understanding what our potential poor decisions are going to be, we can maybe prevent them from happening.
We just finished recording a podcast on your episode where you were interviewing me, and you asked me a really fantastic question, which is, is there anything that's unique about my approach? And I'd love to ask you the same question, which is, is there something about the way you do recovery, the way you approach it, the way you work with your guys that you feel is kind of unique or different?
Yeah. We touched on it a little bit at the beginning, right? I think the role that health, nutrition, and physical transformation plays in the work that we do, I think can maybe separate us from other people out there. But a lot of that is going to be just kind of rooted in me, right? Like I'm going to be the one of one, because I don't know of another guy in our space that has a 15-year bodybuilding career and 15 years of working in health and fitness, coaching transformation prior to getting into this work. So from a mental conditioning standpoint, from an emotional resiliency standpoint, from a nervous system regulation standpoint, from an identity transformation standpoint, like we're going to be very similar and common. Maybe some of the language is a little bit different. I think one thing that maybe separate some of the things that we do is going to be on the nutrition and then physical side of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful. If you could go back and talk to the younger version of yourself that was still struggling with porn addiction, what would you say to him?
Dude, I love that question, man, because it's one I spent a lot of time on. I would say it's going to be okay. I went through some pretty dark moments in my life. I mentioned getting exposed and witnessing suicide and some of the mental health struggles that I saw the men in my life go through. And I think that there were moments for me in my life where I never thought that was going to leave me. And it took me to some pretty dark places. And if I could had a conversation with me back then, I think it would be saying it's going to be okay. And there's lessons in this, and God is going to use you in a way that's maybe you'll never truly understand, but trust in it and do everything you can to continue to grow, evolve, be open-minded, and embrace your uniqueness. There's a lot of weird quirks about me, man. And just who I am. Like if you and I got to spend, a weekend together, some of that stuff would come out, man. And I think I shied away from a lot of that for a long time. I'm a 6'3", 240-pound, gorilla of a man that's got a soft, gentle heart and was a teddy bear at the same time. And I think sometimes that softness that I had, I tried to shy away from because I was afraid.
Mm-hmm.
If people knew what I perceived as maybe weakness, like they wouldn't see me as like this big, strong, masculine man. And it took me, Jeremy, in 2019 through my journey, like I stepped away from the gym and, I lost 50 pounds and I had to love myself as like a skinny dude again, because, the shield that I built in bodybuilding really became a protector. And it became another mask. Like if I could step into a room and be the biggest, be the strongest, be the most aggressive, then nobody would have ever known like what I was really struggling with. Now I embrace all of that stuff now. Like I think I have unique physical abilities that were God-given and enables me to do things to a certain degree, but it was always from a place of anger and rage, whereas now it's like it's much healthier relationship that I have.
Wow. That's so powerful. I know there's so many guys that are listening that will really resonate a lot with what you're saying. I mean, I certainly do. The ways that we can, put on that mask and try to shield ourselves and, puff ourselves up and hide who we truly are because of fear of what other people will think if they got to know us, who we really are. It's a courageous thing for me, actually interesting. I had some kind of connections to, also I was a personal trainer in college, very much focused on fitness. And that was, something I was using for external validation. But my big one was intelligence, like being an academic, being a PhD student at Duke. Like I was so connected with this identity, this ego around, oh, I'm a smart person and I need to prove it to people. And I remember when I quit my PhD program and I ended up getting a job at a donut shop to make money. And I went from this, like, I'm a PhD student at Duke University to I'm selling people donuts and asking what flavor of donut they would want.
Yeah.
It was a big shock to the ego, but it was so liberating to be like, hey, I'm no longer using this as a crutch to inflate myself.
Well, how many guys do we both know, right? That's how we identify ourselves. And yeah, there's a status game that's being played in the world, and I understand all of that. And, you have to fit into these social dynamics, but at times it becomes so surface level, and our identity is rooted in the positions that we hold. You meet somebody, it's like, what's the first three things that guys talk about? It's like, what do you do for a living? What car do you have? What kind of watch are you wearing? Maybe how big is your bank account? It's like, that's it. It's like so much underneath the hood, man. And for me, I love to smoke cigars and have a nice glass of whiskey. And it's been interesting because through this journey, it's like, I'll wear the rebuilt hat, or still when I meet guys, it's like, hey, what do you do? Yeah, I'm a podcast host and I run an organization that helps guys with porn addiction. And it's always interesting how that's kind of taken when I first meet somebody. But I've had some of the best conversations, man, with strangers about this work and what it's the role it's played in their lives. But yeah, I think so many guys, man, our value is found in the thing that we do, what we've accomplished, how much money is in the bank account. And I want all that for everybody. I want everybody to reach the highest rankings within their corporate field or pursue their wildest dreams and drive the nicest cars and acquire all the financial stuff, like do all of that. But remember, there's so much more to you than what your resume and bank account says.
Well said, man. Well said. Well, final question. Where can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about the programs that you run or the podcast that you have?
Yeah. We're Coach Frank Rich all over the internet. I mean, if you plug that in anywhere, we're not hard to find. Rebuildrecovery.com. As of right now, it'll be going through an updated transition through a rebrand that we're doing this year with the Rebuilt Recovery becoming the Rebuilt Man. But on Instagram, it's probably, if you guys want to connect with me there, Coach Frank Rich, drop me a message. I'm happy to respond. I'm still proud to say like I'm the one that's active in there and I love getting messages and having conversations. So check out the podcast, The Rebuilt Man, The Superman Life, YouTube stuff. But yeah, Coach Frank Rich, you can't miss us.
Awesome. And I just want to thank you for coming on the podcast because I really do, love the stuff that you're putting out there. Your Instagram is fantastic. The motivation, I mean, the authenticity that you speak from and the no bullshit approach I think is such a needed voice in the world. A lot of people are kind of, sidestepping or skirting around the issue, but you really call it out and you're not afraid to take a stand on it. And I think that's very needed. So I appreciate the work that you do.
Likewise, brother. I appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, folks. That's it for the episode today. We'll catch you guys on the next episode of Unhooked.